Jessica, welcome to the podcast. I am super excited for this chat and to dive into your work.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
So tell us a little bit about yourself. I mean, I found you, so I know what you do, but tell us a little bit about who you are, where you come from, and why we're listening to you about EQ.
Well, I'm right now a therapist in private practice. I specialize helping people with relationships, couples, families, but navigate even their relationship with themselves. That's often centered around what their emotional experience is and learning how to manage that. I've been doing this kind of work in some iteration for about 20 years, maybe more. But I actually think that it's a way that I've looked at the world since I was really young, actually, paying attention to emotion, my own emotional life, recognizing how it was hard to find other people that maybe were doing what I was doing. I thought that everybody did it, but I recognized that maybe they didn't pay attention to it in the same way. And how that impacted us in relationship, that when we're not aware of other people's emotional experience or our own, it can really get in the way of connecting.
For sure.
So, yeah. So that's part of how I just work in my private practice. It's also why I've actually taken a step to found a an app called Relatable, which is all about bringing a lot of the clinical knowledge we have around relationships and helping people learn this language that includes a lot of emotional intelligence, a lot of EQ, coupled with other relationship moves, and take it outside of a clinical setting, take it outside of a therapy room, because I think more of us need access to it, and to start normalizing it as almost like a movement of sorts that says, hey, I think we could do this better. We need more connection with one another, and let's make this accessible, and let's make it more in the norm, right?
Yeah.
Not something we have to do behind closed doors, right? So yeah, it's an app that I'm co-founded with a dear friend and colleague, and it's launching in September, which is super exciting. So
Yeah, I've just been reading about that app, and I think to me it just sounds like, oh, like it just like there's a resource there at your fingertips where you can actually cultivate your own relationship with emotions, let alone your relationship with others and their emotions.
yes, absolutely. And I love, like, the idea is that it's at your fingertips, and it doesn't have to be a deep dive to practice it. You can literally listen to something for 5 minutes and get, how do I actually practice that though? How do I integrate that into my life and get those kinds of prompts so that you can bring it into your life and into your relationships? The idea is to be on the app for a short amount of time and then be in your real life for a longer amount of time with the skills and practicing the skills, because sometimes we're really great and awesome in our relationships, and sometimes we aren't so good. It is, I think of it as a practice, like emotional intelligence. It's like, it's not a fixed state, right?
Yeah,
It's something that ebbs and flows.
when it comes to relationship, even with myself, I've always been hyper aware of how overwhelming and ever present the emotion aspect is. And often, more often than not, I would say, not really knowing how to express, how to hold others. I'm actually better at holding others than I am at my own emotions, And before we hopped onto the call, we were having a quick discussion about how in early childhood, we do a lot of work with kids around emotions and understanding them, regulating them. But it seems to be like you're just expected to get it. And then adults, and it's kind of like financial literacy. It's just not. Like, I think it's something we need to keep learning. So how do you define emotions?
First, I couldn't agree with you more that it's certainly something that needs to be taught and cultivated with some explicit direction and help. So I agree with that. And it's great that kids are learning about it, but I think that adults need to learn about it too, and also just practice it. But in terms of what do I think of what emotions are? Well, they're definitely physiological. They're physiological experiences, which is what makes them quite powerful because they're really undeniable when they arise in us. I think most of us can relate to that. You feel it, and then it signals something to you. Usually is something you're going to respond to. There's a charge with it, like an energetic charge that is asking you to do something, and sometimes we express them, we see it, we can see it we can see it on people's faces, we can see it in their body language, we can hear it in their voice. But other times we respond by shutting down, right? The emotion does something to say, you say, no, it can't flow, it can't get released, it can't be shared. And I think that's where we run into, actually, I'd say that's where we actually become less intelligent around the emotions when we do that, because we're not learning how to work with them. So I kind of answered, I threw some other things in there, but just in terms of what emotions are, I think they're a physiological experience that drives us to do something we usually, make sense of them and have a feeling associated with them. And they drive us to express or react to them, which is what makes them so powerful.
Yeah, for sure. And I think just that whole being human, I think, is to emote. And I think it separates us. Obviously, I'm not sure. I'm not really that into animals and plants and their emotions, but they have them. But for us, it's like, I love that you say it drives us to do things or not to do things. And I think that that's like a big driver when it comes to emotions. And when you were speaking there, I just thought, like, gosh, it's not that long ago, definitely culturally here in Australia, where the suppression of emotions was the social norm.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so
Especially
what are we supposed to do with that? Like, when we're
right.
trying to shift the dialogue or shift the experience, it can be difficult because each generation has to take it one step further.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that in America, I would say, it's similar, a stoicism, looking like you have it all together, really wanting to be, it looked weak maybe, or, not to be trusted. You don't want to show too much, especially for men too. I think that, that women have, been given more, space for that. It's been more socially acceptable. So I think, there's a real disconnect there, and it makes it harder, for men to do that because of those social norms. And there's hope, because conversations like this, or some folks that maybe have more skill and savvy and fluency and honestly courage to say, hey, I'm willing to show you that it's actually okay. I'm going to show you what I do, how I do it, and I'm going to make it actually okay for me. And I'm going to try to make it okay for you too. Right. I think sometimes we think we're going to step into emotions, they're going to totally overwhelm us, swallow us whole, we're not going to survive it, or it's going to be humiliating. And if we can actually say, well, actually, I can sort of still find my steadiness. I'm not going to get judged. I'm not going to be shamed. I'm going to still be, I'll use myself, right? Jess, in my body, I'm okay. But I am going to share that this really sad thing happened to me, and it's devastating. And I might show you a little bit of that, right? If I tear up, I'm not going to be afraid. That's a really healthy thing to do as a human being. You just referenced animals, like it's a very mammalian part of existence, is that we feel these things. We're supposed to be sad when somebody dies. Crying when somebody dies is like, and actually our nervous systems, this is so interesting, our nervous systems respond to being in connection around these emotions. It makes us feel safer and steadier, and like we can get through it when we're able to do it and share in a way that said that we get the message, oh, it was okay that I did that. Actually, you still think I'm an okay person, and you see that I'm struggling, and you might even relate to it. Wow, I actually feel like I can get through this now. It's like it's to your point, it's even that much more essential that we make some of these cultural shifts, right? That we normalize that this is good for our health, truly. I mean, there's study after study showing how much these kinds of connections are imperative to our wellness, and not just mental wellness, physical wellness. So
Yeah, and I think too, like, it makes me think how the patriarchy has totally shot both of us in the foot. The men have to suppress, but we're also labeled hysterical, or we're labeled over emotional, so we can't be in positions of, say, influence or power. And I think I love it that that's changing, and it makes me think the role social media is playing in that, like people coming on and being maybe authentically raw or not, but people being able to emote publicly, and maybe right now it's a little bit of an outlet or an attention thing, maybe for some. But I often think of, teenagers, like watching my teenage nephew. He's so much more apt at talking about emotions and the way things make him feel than I would ever have been.
That sounds positive to me,
Hope-
right? That seems like the needle moving in the right direction, hopefully, right? Like,
Hopefully.
yeah.
So I think the to be intelligent emotionally, I think for me, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I see it as two-pronged. I see, like, you have to be intelligent with your own emotions to understand the emotion, and to actually, like you say, that call to action or inaction, and that choice, and how you regulate or support yourself through that. But then I think there's an emotional intelligence that comes with that connection. So how, like, can you just dive into that? Like, what does it mean to be emotionally intelligent? What does it look like?
Yeah, it's a good question, because it can feel a little amorphous or like vague. It's like, what is this? How does this actually show up? I think you're absolutely right that your own knowing that, having your own compass, that where you have a sense of, I get I get what's happening in my body, that I get what that feeling is. I can talk about it. I kind of know how to respond to it. I think when you are able to do that within yourself, you're so much, not always, but there's a translation in how do I read it in others? How do I notice it in others? What do I pick up on? Because a lot of times the intelligence, the signals are subtle. People aren't coming in telling me the whole story and this is I'm just sad, this is why, let me tell you, I'm right. It's more like, oh, it's what they withheld. Actually, I was just with a couple before we got on, and one of the partners has recently lost his father unexpectedly, and also is on the brink of losing his dog of 18 years. That's just incredibly important, right? So, and they're about to have a child, and there's so much, the stakes are high, and they've been, anyway, and he's sitting there rubbing his lip, trying not to, he's talking about that he's feeling scared about life, scared about these things, but he's not able, I could tell he's just withholding all this pain and sadness. And I could see him rubbing his lip to soothe, right? So something, just knowing, like, this, hearing his tone of voice. I mean, I know his situation, so there's context, but that's just watching him try to hold it all together. And so that influences how I'm going to respond to him. Now, I'm his therapist, so I'm going to take some liberties, and I'm helping him with this very directly. But it's in noticing that and being responsive to that is sort of like some emotional intelligence in action, right? Going, I want to help this guy with these feelings that he's holding, be able to express them without feeling like he's totally overwhelmed and flooded. So the way I might respond to him is say, like, it seems like there might be something that you're holding in there. The pain makes so much sense to me, right? So I might preemptively validate it just because I'm noticing this. And then it just takes, that's all it took for him to go right into it, right? So it was like, it's reading these signals, noticing oftentimes things that aren't just spoken, right? It's not just the words. It's often everything around the words, the pace, the tone, the emotional tenor. We can usually, and sometimes it's we feel it, right? We feel it if we know that the feeling is there for the person. And so part of the intelligence is not just calling it out and saying, hey, you're sad and you're not talking about it. That's actually not savvy or fluent or intelligent to me. That's more, the intelligence is in how we respond with the information that we're getting to be, for whatever it is that we're trying to do, right? If we're trying to make a connection, put somebody at ease, build a team at work, these things apply across the board. It's not just in our personal relationships, but in professional relationships too, right? So, I mean, even if we like, I don't know, I'm going to try to do that with you when I'm talking to you, right? Like, not that I'm noticing anything right now, but like, I'm going to use those skills. No, I'm not like,
noticing right now. So.
So, but I'm just saying, like, right, that I like, it's about how we pay attention and how we attune and how we respond, but it's informed by this. Again, I go back to calling it a language. Like, are we attuned to the emotional life of the people around us? And are we responding to that emotional, the emotional messages and emotional language in a way that helps us feel like that person, the other people feel like, oh, you're getting me. No, you're seeing that. I mean, you're actually making me feel okay about it. Right?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. But I want to pick up on the idea that emotions are a language and ask you, are we all, is there one emotional language? Because how I experience anger might be very different to how my partner experiences anger. And then is it a matter of knowing your own emotional language to be able to be open to someone else's, or vice versa? Like, to me, I'll tell you a feeling. I'm feeling overwhelmed. Like this whole emotional life that we have, when you start to think about it, is quite overwhelming.
Right. And so the intelligence of it, when I think of it, it isn't so much that, like, to your point, that we experience anger exactly the same way. But when you start to tell me that I'm feeling angry and I'm feeling available to hearing you say that, going, oh, okay, I know, oh, anger, I've named that for myself before. I kind of know that experience in me. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with hearing this from you. What happened? What are you so angry about? You want to tell me about it? Like, oh, wow, what did you do? Right. That it's safe for you to go, like, just tell me about your anger. And I don't necessarily have to have the same experience of anger, but that I can say that I can reference, oh, I get anger in my life. I get what happens for me in anger. And I can make this a place we can go. Right. Which isn't saying, oh, let's get all angry together and invite anger, but it's more that, oh, again, like the language of it is more, this isn't territory that I'm scared to be in. This isn't territory that I'm thinking, oh, I can't navigate this. No, I actually have some savvy here. I have some skills when being here, versus your anger has to look just like my anger. And I know exactly, because it's not so intelligent of me to say, like, oh, I know exactly what your anger is. That's actually like kind of co-opting your experience, which isn't that, right? That's not that helpful.
Your friends say that, like, oh my gosh, I know exactly how that feels. Like, it's almost like how we think we're connecting, but it's actually totally invalidating my experience.
Well, there you go. So that would be, I would say, actually not a great sign of EQ, which is different than, right? It's if I have a sense of my own emotional life and emotional experience, I know I need to make space for that. And then it also means that you have it and I need to make space for it. That's an intelligent use of like our emotional experience, right?
Yeah.
I can't tell you what you feel. I can't tell you what your experience is, right? But I can certainly make it safe enough for you to figure that out with me present, right? And you don't have to be a therapist to do this. I mean, like in general, right? Like it's when we have those friendships or those connections with people where we're like, oh my gosh, I can just be like real with you about what is going on. It feels so good. It feels so good. At least for me. I need it.
Sure, we all need it. So like,
Yeah.
besides being able to, like, I would call that as hold space, like allow you the space to say like you're sad or whatever you're feeling, but what are the other signs or characteristics of emotional intelligence? Like, what does it actually look like?
I think people that have a lot of access to empathy, because that means that they can reference their own experience around feelings and extend, again, without taking up all this space that says, oh, I know your experience, is like, oh, I can feel some of that with you. I can hold you in that. And I don't know, whatever would be helpful to you. Maybe I could help whatever you need from me in response. So I think empathy is a huge piece. when we're able to influence, and when I say influence, I don't mean like just convince people to do stuff, right? But just influence and impact others. To me, that says that people, you're listening, you're picking up on what people are maybe needing or wanting, even if they can't fully articulate it. Like, I think good managers in a workplace do this, right? They're having a sense of where people are so it can show up that way. And so then you become a person that can motivate other people, right? That validates other people for where they are. I think it also comes in with just the way we treat other people, right? That you can observe it. And I don't know, how does this person have a sense of how they impact others, right? So if we are being waited on, how do they respond to the people that are, serving or helping, right? Do they have a sense of what their impact is on others, and they care about that, right? To me, that means they get that other people also have an emotional experience, and I'm not going to ignore that. I'm not going to dehumanize that they also have this experience, an emotional experience. Also, I think an ease in sharing their own emotional experience, right? Even if they, like, I'll use, just because crying is like one of those things that I think people really try not to do, right? I can't even tell you, even coming in a therapy office, people are like, oh, I didn't want to cry. I'm like, of all places you could cry, and they still don't want to do it, right? And I'm like, but it's
yeah, even in readings,
like
people are like, no. I'm like, oh, I don't know, I'm crying. I'm like, are you kidding? Everyone cries here. I don't feel like I've done my job if you've not cried.
Yeah. That's right. So it's that, like, the ease in being able to share your own experience and deal with whatever emotions might come up. It's not like, oh, I tell the story and I'm perfectly regulated the entire time. It's actually, I can get a little bit emotional, but I'm here. I got it. I'm okay. I'm not going to get flooded and have, kind of freak everyone out. It's okay if that happens. That happens. We get overwhelmed with our feelings, but to me, that intelligence it's really about being able to do that. Yeah, I think it sort of touched on it, right? Encouraging and supporting other people. I think great coaches are great, have high EQ, and professional sports coaches that are really have really high EQ and understand how to motivate players, what they need, when, and why. So that's does that help? Kind of
on that. So
the examples more granular.
Yeah, you have to be empathetic. You have to be able, I love that your sense of impact, and you have an ease in terms of a capacity to not be put off or overwhelmed by someone else's emotions. But how do we cultivate those skills for ourselves? Because I think that's the big thing. I mean, at the end of the day, the choice to share an emotion may sometimes be involuntary because it is so overwhelming and it is such a big wave. But most of the time, I think we're very selective about what we choose to share with other people, but we can't escape ourselves. And many people try and squash it down, and we get that. But how do we begin to cultivate this empathy, this self-observation, this ease, and even sitting with our own tricky, overwhelming, uncomfortable emotions?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think I'd say a couple things broadly to start, which is to be easy on yourself and kind to yourself in doing it, and reassure yourself that it's a practice that's going to ebb and flow. You're not, you could really get it great, be great at it in a certain moment and then not as good in another moment. And just, that is part of it. That is life, right? And then to take small steps and practice. And I would say, like, so I'll kind of put it in three ways. One is when we go internal and we think about, I almost like the idea of checking in with yourself, but pairing it with something you already do, like brushing your teeth, or if you have like the luxury of like sitting and drinking your coffee or tea uninterrupted for 10 minutes or 15 minutes, to just have a check-in and just notice what comes up. Don't have an agenda. Oh, I have to get the feeling. I have to name the feeling. Just start to be an observer of yourself, become more aware of yourself, and be, none of it's wrong. It's all good. It's all okay. Just start to notice it. If you do anything like yoga or meditate or journal, those are all amazing practices where you could invite even, what's the body sensation that I'm feeling? Just learn to be with it, learn to describe it. Is there a feeling attached to it? Maybe there is. Start to learn. It's like you're just inviting yourself to practice that. I also, there's kind of categories when you do that. You can go from, because it all gets connected, which is why I think emotions are tricky, because we have thoughts, we have behaviors that we do, we have sensations. We can't tell, is that an emotion? Is that a feeling? Like, it can be real messy. So just give yourself grace and know that there are different buckets, and just kind of play in those areas and see what kind of data you get, and know that it's all okay. Like just that alone, really 5 or 10 minutes, if you can tie it to something day to day, is a good idea. I think that can really help. I would also think about trying to observe in other people what you think they might be feeling or thinking. And you can do this low stakes, like when you're watching a show, do it with the characters, or reading a book, do it with the characters, especially if you're notice that you are moved by what you're like. If you feel an emotion, like, oh, that's a great invitation. You're like, oh, wow, what's going on for this person? What's happening in me? Right. So we just start paying attention to it and trying to put some language around it. And then this is the one I love this part, which is like, find people that want to do this. Find people that maybe already are really good at this, and make this part of the relationship. And it doesn't have to be formal. Like, we're going to sit down now and we're going to talk about emotions, and we're going, right? It could just be, hey, this is part of the culture of our relationship. We do this. Like, I go there, I bring up the things, and maybe I'm going to lead, and I'm not going to know. It might be, I might not have it all clear, but I'm really willing to go there, and I'm willing to be responsive to the other person. Right. And again, it's like that language thing. If I were trying to learn Spanish, then it would be really helpful if I hung out with other people trying to learn Spanish, or even better yet, like Spanish, like fluent Spanish speaking folks that are willing to like help me with sort of this kind of practice. So those are some of the ways that I think about practicing it. And just be, and I would reassure, like, it is in us. It's in us. I think that we're primed to be able to do this. Truly, we're primed for it. We're wired to connect. We're wired to pay attention and attune to ourselves, to get good data, to keep ourselves alive. Right. So it's in us. It's just, I think it gets sidestepped a lot, and it's been sidestepped a lot in the way we've been brought up. Right. So we're learning some new things. We're learning new moves together.
Yeah, and I think I love being a learner. And I think when we give ourselves permission to be learners, that makes it just more playful. And I think what you just said there kind of leads me into the last aspect of EQ that I want to talk to you about, because I think it's the trickiest. Our community, anyone that's listening to this, is really interested in improving their own lives, their inner world, or even just being curious about themselves. And what we find a lot, and I have definitely found this in my experience, is that when I get much more self-knowledge or self-actualization or growing intelligence about myself, it dramatically shifts the relationships I have in my life. And I think one of the biggest fears for people to evolve is that what happens to the current state of play in their relationships, whether it be with their most intimate chosen partner or their best friend or their family, like when they change, when they grow, when they expand, what happens when then you're still in relationship with people that met you on the level of emotional immaturity or emotional complete lockdown, or are not interested in evolving and becoming someone who is able to be mature enough or expand their intelligence enough to hold your emotions without making it about judgment or about making them really uncomfortable. Because a lot of the times I see, and like I've experienced, a lot of relationships end naturally, but just because there isn't that common ground anymore.
Yeah.
So how do you respond to that and those fears around evolving?
Yeah. It's Yeah, it's funny. I was just telling a couple this morning who's working on some hard stuff, really getting through some hard stuff, and they've been together a long time. Um, and I said, and I believe this is one of the things that it's a hallmark of a relationship that, in my mind, can really make it, is one that both folks are actually willing to hear what the other person needs and say, I'm willing to grow, I'm willing to meet you, I'm willing to evolve and do this work. I'm really going to work hard to be responsive to what you're asking for and do this growth, which I hear what you're asking. And so I am with you on it's pretty fundamental, especially for some folks. Some of us, like I'm with you that it's something I couldn't compromise in my own relationships. I really can't really compromise it in close friendships. I can't compromise it in my marriage. It's something that's so fundamental to me. So I know that it's a deal. It's kind of a deal breaker, right? And so I think, to your question, we have to get really clear on what we're willing to tolerate or be, what we're willing to say, like that's okay, and what we're willing to say, actually, I think that might be a non-negotiable, and then be clear about it, right? Because if we're not clear about it, then we don't actually give the other person, whether it's a friendship or a partnership, to say, oh, but actually, if it means I might lose you, or you're really this is this serious, maybe I am willing. I don't know what it looks like. It's might be kind of scary, but I might be willing because you matter to me. The relationship matters to me. But that's a lot. That's like a pretty big risk too, right? To put it out there. So I don't think that's the only move, right? But I do think as the person who might have done the growing already, or is recognizing, wow, we're really disconnected here, right? I think there's a clarity that you want to have with yourself and a clarity that you want to communicate. And I would say the more clear and the more, I'm going to say vulnerable, but I want to make sure that what I mean by that is that it's not a demand, right? It's not a threat. Yeah. When it comes as a threat, it's harder to like, oh, okay, do I want to stay here? I'm not sure. But if it's like, this is a deep need in me that I'm feeling so disconnected from us, from you, I don't know how to do this, right? That sounds really different. Yeah. And if it doesn't change, I'm not sure that I can keep doing it. And here's why, right? Versus, or if it's all about how bad you are or criticizing, or right, the person's a lot less willing to probably hear what it is you actually need and what you're looking for, because you get defensive or you feel, ashamed. And so you kind of, they want to pull away. So it's tricky. I can't say that there's a silver bullet. This is what you do and it'll go swimmingly. But I do think the clarity and taking that risk and being honest, but also keeping it on your experience and not putting somebody down or criticizing or making assumptions that they really don't have it in them. Because sometimes people surprise us.
Yeah, I often find people surprise us in the best ways, but like what I'm hearing, it comes full circle, and you're triggering lots of memories of discussions I've had with people in sessions where it's like, oh, you're saying that you want this from your partner, but you have no idea what it is that you do actually want. And you just want it to be different because you don't feel comfortable or you don't feel good or whatever. But you have no way of cultivating that for yourself. So how could you possibly explain it to them? And one thing, and just while you're talking, it triggered a memory in me of a very close friend of mine. Actually, my grandmother always used to say to me, you accept people the way they are. And this close friend of mine always talks about friends in terms of days of the week. So she's like, she's a Saturday night friend, Kirsten. Like we're not going to like be calling her at 3 a.m. when we're at our most scared. Like, she's great to have at the dinner table because she's so engaging, but she's your Saturday night friend. We're your 3 a.m. friends. And to kind of be able to categorize people like that, that's a coping mechanism. I'm not sure how healthy it is that I've had. So the expectations of people, like, I don't have to be fully vulnerable emotionally with everybody. and I can be very discerning around that. But that doesn't mean these people get wiped out. You know, I can just so enjoy them where they're at.
Yes. Yes, I love that. That's a funny analogy, the days of the week. That's so fun. Are you going to get calls? You're like, ooh, what day am I? You know, like from your friends. No, but I couldn't agree more. And there's a lot of actually in that, a lot of intelligence in that, emotional intelligence on your part to go, you know, I see who that person is. I kind of see their capacity in terms of, and I see mine, and I'm okay. And it's more that acceptance, like I'm okay with it. And actually I can have great fun or great connections in certain ways. And that's good. And I just know that.
I've had to learn that. That was
Oh yeah.
hard for me to learn because like I'm Cancerian. I love an emotion. Like it's
Yeah.
all emotions, right? I'm a nightmare. And so for me, it's like, if you are in my life, you are in.
That's right.
To learn, like really learn that
And
no.
that can be, yeah, that's right. I love that you know that about yourself. I have some of that too. Like, I've had friends tell me like that I've known for my entire life. They're like, Jess, why do I always feel like I'm on the couch with you? You know, why is it? It's like always going to be the deepest, like we're going to go to all the places, you know, like that's just how I roll, you know, but I also want to have a lot of fun and lightness and, you know, levity. So, but I also think, you know, you're bringing up a really good point, which is our experience of what's, vulnerable, what we like in relationship can be so drastically different from other people that like that it can be like how you, to your point, you're going like, we're going to talk about all the things, we're going to go to all the places, and it's like that's not everybody's zone. That's
No,
not
it's
at
like
all.
we're here
And
for
it's
starts. Yeah. Like what are you
right.
talking
And also I don't even feel I don't like that. I don't end up, it's a way that I can't feel close right now, or we haven't done enough things for me to go there, right? So it's easy for us to, it's so common, right? That we kind of, we have a way that we think it is or it should be. And so that's how it should, that is how it is for everyone. It's like, no, right? But part of the intelligence is that, right? Recognizing that people are in different places around it. And then you get to decide then what you do about that. That's what I think is the best, right?
Yeah, and I think when you take that decision, it's so empowering.
Yes.
Rather than, I used to find it really limiting because I just want to go to the depths with everyone. Like, let's go. But like now I see it as empowering. Whereas before I probably experienced it as rejection. Like they don't want to go to the depths. Like why?
Right.
But now it's, and then of course I went through the judgment phase, like, oh, well, they can't, or with it, you know. Now I'm like, oh, it just is what it is. Like,
It is, or they're that, that's where they are in their journey or as a person or as a, right. Yeah.
for sure.
Right.
I mean, I could talk about this stuff all day. I just think the human condition is so
Yeah.
fascinating because, like you say, there's no silver bullet. If there was a silver bullet, we would have found it. But I'm going to put you on the spot because I think that there is a secret spice to it all. So it's not a secret, it's not a silver bullet, but a secret spice for me is just curiosity.
Oh, I love that. It's a good one. Very good one.
Do you have
You're
a
gonna ask me mine? Yeah,
yeah,
what mine is?
that's what I mean. I'm going
I
to
mean,
really put you on the spot.
when you say that, I think of one of the most, I call it like the secret sauce in relationships is attunement. When we, because to me, that's all about, can I read what's happening around me? Can I be responsive to it and tune in? That also means I'm doing that in myself. So there's so much skill that's happening and it's subtle and it's just like having the exact right little move that helps actually bridge connection or make people feel at ease, or, you know, oh, you bring the energy up because of the way you responded to something, right? It's just that. So attunement is something that I think is, so it is a secret sauce in relationships and in life, relationship to yourself, but relationship to other people too. But I love curiosity because you almost cannot go wrong with curiosity.
Fool's paradise. But
Yes.
I love attunement because I would say that that's what I am working on myself right now. Like, how do I respond rather than react? Because
Oh,
it's
you're
very,
speaking my language.
very
Yeah,
tricky. You
it's
know,
very tricky.
I'm telling you something and you're like, oh my gosh, you idiot. How do I not bring them, to a place of that, like, oh, this doesn't make me feel good or comfortable or reassured, and just to hold space for them in that attunement, knowing that you'll get there eventually if you're able to walk together rather than
Yeah.
just, oh, you should be over here with me. So much always to learn and to practice. But if
That's right.
anyone wanted to connect with you and your work, and especially your app, where can we find you?
Oh, you and anyone can find us at relatable.app. So the website's relatable.app. If you want, actually, we talk about, it's a different secret skill that they can download our, a little brochure, not brochure, but like information at it's relatable.app/relationships. And it'll be, you can sign up for our email list. We have a newsletter that goes out every week. We're launching in September. So that'll be, we're doing some advertising, but we'll also be talking about that in our newsletter. So relatable.app/relationships. And there's another secret skill that you can practice right away. You can get it. It's our lead magnet on our website. So
Amazing.
it's been super fun. I could talk to you all day. It's so fun.
Well, I'll pop that link in the show notes. So head down there to click through and start cultivating a little spice cabinet for EQ and be winning
Right.
life, But thank you so much for your time, for your wisdom, and hopefully for provoking us and inspiring us to really hold space for our emotional life.
I love it. I'm so glad I could be here. It was a lot of fun. Thanks for having me.